Hey, I'm McDonald, your real estate agent with Real Property Associates, and breaking news, Washington was voted as the #1 state in the U.S. News and World Report rankings here for 2019. They look at all 50 states and they have 8 different categories that they look at, and they rate each state on, well, in their opinion, which state is the best based on all of the different data points. And this year, Washington came out on top. So really quick, I want to talk about the different categories and where Washington ranks there, and then just share some honest thoughts about my experience living here in Washington, and I'd love to get some of yours as well. So the different categories that they look at in their report, first of all, healthcare, education, economy, infrastructure, opportunity, fiscal stability, crime and corrections, and then also natural environment. So Washington on this list rated number 4 for healthcare, number 4 for education, number 3 for the economy, number 2 for infrastructure, number 19 for opportunity, number 22 for fiscal stability, number 15 for crime and corrections, and then number 14 for natural environment. And honestly, was a little surprised by this one and had to dig a little deeper on it. And it's focusing specifically on air and water quality and pollution. So it's not necessarily how pretty it is, which for me has always been a plus here, but it's some of these other factors. So for me, I have always known that Washington's been a pretty place to live. I've always really appreciated the natural beauty of the area, from the Puget Sound to the ocean to the different mountains. I have family on the east side of the state, and I've always lived here on the west side of the state, and just really enjoyed all of the different things that the state has to offer from just a natural perspective. But I've always taken for granted some of these other categories like healthcare, education, economy, infrastructure. I never really have paused to think about how we compare in those areas. I've always gone on planes and gone to Texas or, gone to Florida and, Hawaii, some of these fun destinations, California, where maybe the weather's a little bit nicer. But I always come back and I'm so glad to be here. And for me, it's always because of how pretty it is and just it feels like home, part of it. But I think the other part of it is just how appreciative I am for all the different things that Seattle and Washington in general has to offer, but I haven't put as much emphasis in my own head about some of these other factors. I think what I like most about living here in Washington is the natural beauty that you have all across the state, and specifically for the Puget Sound region. I was born in Edmonds, Washington, and I've lived in Seattle, and I've lived in Bellevue, Mukilteo, which is a little bit north of Seattle, and then now back to Edmonds. So I've kind of been in the same area most of my life, and honestly it's because I just love it and I love the beauty that it is here. Now, I have 2 questions that I personally have reflected on as I think about this article, and I'm going to ask you to reflect on these same 2 questions. The first one is, what do I like most, or what do you like most about living in Washington? And for me personally, I've lived in the Puget Sound area my whole life. I was born in Edmonds, and I've lived in Mukilteo, and I've also lived in Seattle and Bellevue, and now I'm back to Edmonds. So really been in a pretty tight window. If you're not from here or you're from the other side of the state, that's really a 30-minute radius tops. So I've lived in that same portion of Washington, and really I just love how beautiful it is. And I do love the different parks and the beach. I can get to the beach in 10-15 minutes from where I live easily, and I can go to multiple locations. I can get to Lake Washington and go boating in 15-20 minutes as well. So there's just a lot of different fun things. And if I wanted to go to the mountains, take me an hour to an hour and a half, depending on which mountains I went to. You can get out on the slopes. Personally, not a big skier, snowboarder. I'm more of a hiker, so I love hiking in the mountains, and it's just really easy access from where we're at, as well as you have all the good jobs and higher paying jobs in the Puget Sound region. So kind of a great combination of different factors. Now, as I think about this other question, what would I change about Washington? And specifically, I'm thinking of where I'm at. I think for me, it would be changing the weather, to be honest. And overall, I appreciate the weather, and I know that it's because of the different seasons here that we get the green that we have over in the Puget Sound region. But for me, I think if between January and maybe end of April, beginning of May, if it could just, man, be a little bit brighter and a little bit warmer and a little bit sunnier. We really have beautiful summers here in Western Washington from July until September. It's just gorgeous. And generally we're in 70s, 80s. It's not too hot. It's sunny most days. It's warm. The water temperatures rise in the lakes and in the surrounding areas. But come fall, it starts to get cloudy and rainy, and it really drags on for a really long time. So if I could change anything, it would be the weather in these next few months coming up, just being able to get a little bit more vitamin D, if you know what I mean. So I guess for me, and my question for you is, what do you most like about living in Washington? And maybe say where you're from and where you live, and then also, what would you change about Washington? What's that one thing that's either frustrating to you or in your opinion could be better? I'd love to hear from you down in the comments. This video is in my hope and an attempt to start conversation about what's awesome about living in Washington. I'll also link up the article from the U.S. News and World Report so that you can look at that in a little bit more depth if you'd like. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope that it brought value to you and opened your eyes maybe a little bit to how awesome it is to live in Washington. And it's not perfect, but it's a pretty awesome place. If you enjoyed this video and it brought value to you, I'd really appreciate a subscription to my channel, as you'll find other awesome content here, specifically real estate related in the Seattle area. Hope to talk to you soon.